Hi, Ryan here. On today's episode, we'll be replacing the hot end on a Wanhao Duplicator i3+. Welcome back. So this is one of the few printers that we get in for repair here in the shop. Customer brought it in with a couple symptoms, wasn't extruding properly, and there was a few issues on it. So we've diagnosed that's probably got a little bit of a clog somewhere in the hot end. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pull the extruder apart, get into the hot end, and probably replace the ptfe and maybe the nozzle if it's clogged. It's a relatively simple procedure, and it's something that you can do at home with the tools that's in your kit. So let's get started. Now the first thing we'll have to do here is actually power the printer on. And we'll want to raise the Z height up quite a bit here so that we can get access to it. But before we do that, we want to get rid of any actual filament that's left in the hot end. So we'll go into our settings menu. Oops, sorry. Go into utilities, and then we're going to preheat our filament for PLA. And then return back here. And we're going to move our Z height up quite a bit. We want to give ourselves enough room on the bottom here that we can get our Allen wrenches in and be able to access everything nice and easily. Okay, that should be high enough for now. So we'll let this come back up to temperature. And we'll go under our print menu here and into our status, and we'll see what our temperature is. 120 degrees so far. We'll let it come up a little bit more before we take out the filament. We'll also need a 9mm socket and a socket wrench. That will help us get the nozzle off the printer itself, but we'll get to that in a minute. What we can start to do here is taking our 2.5mm Allen key, take off the two screws holding the top fan in place. Now these are relatively short screws and they're quite little, so we want to just make sure you don't drop them and lose them on the floor or anything. Now taking this fan off is not required, but it is a lot easier. Makes getting access to everything a lot easier for us. So we'll put that screw and that screw out of the way, and we'll just take the fan and put it up over here for now. Okay, so we're up the temperature here, and we're just going to pull the filament out. Looks like we might have broken a little bit off, but that's okay for now. So now, with everything up to temperature here, we can actually go ahead and grab our adjustable wrench. We're going to want to put it on the heating block right here ourselves. And we want to put it on the side opposite to where all the wires are coming out. That way we don't break any of the wires or anything else that might be in contact. So just tighten that up a little bit, snug it up. We're going to take our 9mm socket and wrench and put it right over top of the hot end with a little bit of luck. There we go. And you can see when it's up to temperature, it should start to thread right out nice and easily. It's already pretty loose. Now you don't want to touch this yourself. This is quite hot and you'll easily burn yourself here. Go. There we go. Okay, so we want to be careful with this. Put it down to the side. We're not going to burn something with it. We'll just leave it in the socket as it is. Okay, so now we're just going to take our pliers here and carefully remove the ptfe. Might take a little bit of force to pull it out, but eventually it should come out. And you can see here, it is a little bit deformed. There's a lot of discoloration. The ptfe begins to degrade about 250, 255 degrees C. So over time with extended printings and use, these will wear out. You can see it's a little bit compressed. That was probably from me when I removed it with the pliers. But the discoloration and the rest of the marks is probably leading to the issues that we were having with the printer. There's still a little bit of filament left in here, so over time these will wear down, and probably contributing that with the high heat probably caused the issue that we see. So in your printer with all the spare accessories, you will actually get a piece of replacement ptfe, and we can use that to put it back into the hot end and make everything nice and functional again. For this step right now though, we don't need the rest of the extruder at current temperature. So all we're gonna do is just shut it off and let it cool down for a few minutes. While we're doing that, we can take our wrench again now, and I always like to have a look at the extruder assembly and make sure the gears are all properly seated, that the bearings are moving nice, and that there's no debris caught in the extruder itself. So on the i3+, what I like to do is put the extruder motor against the frame right here, and then we're just going to take out these 2 screws. Now these are long screws. These go through the fan, through the cooling fins, into the extruder, and then into the motor. So they're quite long. And there's just the 2 of them. Okay. Now if we're careful, we can pull away the motor. And what I like to do here is just have a quick look at the motor and the gear itself. Now there's a little bit of filament buildup on the wheels itself. It's not too bad. That's pretty acceptable. If you want, you can take an X-Acto knife and rub off some of the filament in between those teeth. What you want to also look out for too as well is if any of these teeth are worn down. If you're seeing a groove building up in the extruder gear here, or if anything looks out of place, or if this whole gear is further back on the shaft or too far forward, you'll want to actually take this extruder assembly off and then relocate the wheel or replace the gear altogether. This one looks pretty good. It's only a minor buildup. That's not too bad. We can probably work around that. So, nice thing about the i3+ and many printers is that everything's modular. So I can easily just unplug this cable right here. You never want to grab your wires by the wire themselves. Always grab near the connector so you're not putting too much strain on the connector itself. And we can take that motor off. Subsequently, we can actually take off this fan assembly if we're careful, and we'll just put it down here for now. Take off our heatsink and the 2 spacers that go with it. Okay. So what we want to look for now is we just want to make sure that the ptfe, the heat break is well centered and that there's nothing else for filament along the top side of the heating block here. So this large block right here acts as a giant heat sink effectively, and it absorbs a lot of the heat from the heat break itself and dissipates it across its large mass. So sometimes if the extruder is not extruding properly, or if we've jammed filament into it, we can sometimes get a buildup of filament around the outside of this area, which could lead to some of the performance issues. Another thing we like to do is you can carefully look directly down the bore of the heat break and check for any sort of obscured filament. So there might be some dried filament in there, could be a little burr or something. We just want to make sure that filament path is nice and clean. If you take one of your smaller wrenches, you can actually take the small wrench and pass it directly down through that bore. And just make sure there's nothing stopping filament from passing through. And so far, that looks pretty good. Now, the assembly procedure is basically the same, just in reverse. So the motor, to put the motor back on, it's keyed here. We got 2 little fins on top, and they'll face outwards from the motor. And they'll slot in like so. We're just going to place it roughly in this location, back our frame up against the side of the frame here so it doesn't move around, and we'll reassemble it back in the order. First, after the fans goes on, we'll put these 2 little spacers, and then we'll put this heat sink in place. Okay, and then that whole assembly will slot into the cooling block itself. You'll want to be careful to take note to make sure that none of the wires are pinched between the fan and the block itself, and nothing looks like it is. And then we'll carefully tighten everything back down. And we'll do the other one here. Tighten those down nice and tight. Now you are threading into aluminum, so you don't want to tighten it down too tight because you'll risk stripping out the threads in the aluminum, and then we'd have to replace the entire block assembly itself and the motor itself. So that's pretty good. Everything looks pretty well there. So now, with the hot end somewhat cooled down here, we're going to carefully take our spare ptfe, we're going to slide it up back through the heat block. There we go, like so. And we're going to take our replacement new nozzle If the old nozzle is a little worn out or if it's looking a little tired, we can always replace it with a new one. And we're just going to slot that around the ptfe and then hand tighten it into the block. Okay, just like so. Okay, we're going to power our printer back up again. Make sure all our wires are connected, everything looks good. The cooling fan will assemble back at the end here. I'm going to go into our utilities and then preheat. And in this case, because we want to tighten the hot end against the block when it's up to temperature. That will allow the heat to soak into both the block and the nozzle, and it'll create a nice tight seal and ensure that nothing leaks when we're printing with it. So in this case, to do that, we're going to actually just heat it up to PLA, and then I'm just going to go back into our print menu, and under our status, under status, go to settings, and then we're just going to increase the temperature to about 230 degrees. There we go, and click confirm, and we'll just wait for that to come back up to temperature. Okay, so we're up the temperature here, so we're going to take our adjustable wrench again and put that back on the hot end, being careful not to tear the Kapton tape. We'll snug that up, and we'll take our adjustable wrench here, and all we want to do is snug up the hot end here. So not too tight. As you can see, it's not much of a turn, and that should be it. That just creates a nice solid seal for everything and ensures that none of the filament's going to leak between the heat break or the heat block and the hot end itself or the nozzle itself. So with everything back, we can carefully put our cooling fan back in place. These are the two really small screws that we had before. There we go. Grab my wrench again. A little tricky when you're working upside down with small screws. There we go. Sorry about that. Go. And tighten that one down too. Okay, so now all we want to do is take some of our new neat filament and we'll see just how well it extrudes. So I already trimmed the tip of this filament off on a nice 45-degree angle, and I'm just going to straighten it out here so it feeds nice into the extruder. And we'll try and do this backwards. There we go. And I'm just pushing it in by hand, but it looks like everything is extruding nice and smoothly. We're not getting any of the crackling, the popping, or the inconsistent extrusion we had before. Everything looks nice. We can even go back into our menu here, under our utilities, and under the move menu, and then do extruder in. And just check for a nice consistent extrusion. Beautiful. Everything looks great. So that's all there really is to replacing a nozzle and the ptfe on a Wanhao Duplicator i3. It's easy enough that with the tools included with your printer, you can do it yourself. And it only takes 5–10 minutes. So next time you've got an issue and you're looking to get your printer up and running, consider giving it a shot yourself. You never know what might happen. Remember to like our page, subscribe to our videos, and click the bell in the top corner to be notified of our next video. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you.